There is a quiet desperation that lives in the chest of many people, a hunger so deep, so persistent, that it drives them to do things they are not proud of. They over-explain themselves to people who stopped listening long ago. They shrink themselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for them. They send the message twice, 3 times, then stare at the screen waiting for a reply that may never come. They apologize for being too much and simultaneously apologize for not being enough. They make themselves smaller, louder, softer, harder, whatever shape the other person seems to want, hoping that one day, if they get the formula just right, they will finally be chosen. This is what it looks like to beg people to love you, and it is one of the most painful ways a human being can live. The Stoics saw this clearly, not with contempt, never with contempt, but with the calm, unflinching vision of people who had decided to look at reality as it truly is rather than as they wished it to be. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote in the quiet hours of the night not about conquering armies, but about conquering himself. Epictetus, a man born into slavery who had no power over his physical circumstances, became one of the freest human beings who ever lived because he understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. He understood that you cannot control what other people feel about you, and the moment you stop trying to, you become free. The illusion of earned love. We are taught from the very beginning that love is something you earn. Be good enough and you will be loved. Be pretty enough, successful enough, agreeable enough, impressive enough. Perform well enough on the invisible stage of other people's expectations, and love will be your reward. This is one of the most damaging lies ever told. Not because love cannot be cultivated or deepened. Through our actions, it can. But because the framing is wrong at its core. When you operate from the belief that love must be earned, you place the source of your worth entirely outside yourself. You hand the verdict of your value to other people and then wait, anxiously for their ruling. And since people are inconsistent, distracted, wounded, and sometimes simply indifferent, the ruling is never final. You must keep proving yourself. You must keep performing. The bar keeps moving, and you keep running toward it, exhausted, wondering why you never seem to arrive. The Stoics called this externally referenced living, building your sense of self on things outside your control, and they identified it, without hesitation, as the root of nearly all human suffering. Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." What is in your power? Your thoughts, your choices, your effort, your character, your response to what life gives you. What is not in your power? The feelings of other people, whether they stay, whether they appreciate you. This is not pessimism. This is liberation. What begging actually looks like. When most people hear the phrase begging for love, they imagine something dramatic, someone on their knees tearfully pleading. But the reality is far more subtle and far more common than that. Begging for love looks like this. It looks like staying in a friendship that drains you because you are afraid that if you speak up, the other person will leave, and somehow their leaving would prove that you were never worth staying for. It looks like dimming your opinions in conversation because you have learned that you're authentic. Thoughts make certain people uncomfortable, and their comfort has become more important to you than your truth. It looks like sending a vulnerable message and then immediately following it with, "Sorry." Ignore that, because you would rather retract yourself than risk being rejected for who you actually are. It looks like doing favors you resent, laughing at jokes that hurt you, agreeing with positions you disagree with, all in the service of maintaining a version of connection that is not really connection at all, but performance. It looks like monitoring someone's mood like a weather forecast, watching for signs of sunshine or storm, and adjusting your entire being accordingly, as if your job is to manage their emotional climate rather than inhabit your own life. It looks like chasing people who have already shown you through their actions that they are not choosing you, but interpreting their ambiguity as a puzzle to be solved rather than an answer already given. All of this is begging. None of it is love, and none of it works. Not truly, not lastingly, because anything you get through the performance of a self you are not cannot nourish the self you actually are. The Stoic concept of self-sufficiency. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." But woven through all of his meditations is a deeper principle. The principle that the wise person does not need the world to be different in order to be well. The wise person cultivates an inner life so rich, so grounded, so honest, that the turbulence of other people's opinions cannot destroy it. This is not coldness. This is not the building of walls. The Stoics were not indifferent to people. Marcus wept for his children. Seneca wrote tenderly about friendship. Epictetus spoke with profound warmth about the duty to care for others. But there is a difference between loving people and needing people to love you in return as a condition of your own well-being. There is a difference between offering yourself honestly to another person and requiring their acceptance in order to feel that you are real, that you are worthy, that you are allowed to exist without apology. The Stoics called the quality of inner independence autarkia, self-sufficiency. Not the cold self-sufficiency of someone who has shut everyone out, but the warm self-sufficiency of someone who enters relationships as a whole person rather than a half person looking for another half to complete them. When you are self-sufficient in this way, you can love people freely. You can give without keeping score. You can be generous without resentment. You can be vulnerable without it being a trap, because your peace does not depend on their response. And paradoxically, this is exactly the kind of person that people are genuinely drawn to. Not because you are performing independence to attract them, but because there is something profoundly restful about being around someone who does not need you to be anything other than what you are, because they have already done that work for themselves, on being chosen and not being chosen. Here is a truth that stings, and then, if you sit with it long enough, begins to heal. Not everyone is going to choose you, and that is not evidence of your unworthiness. The Stoics understood that the universe operates according to its own logic, which does not center on your desires or your pain. The rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. Good people are sometimes abandoned. Loyal people are sometimes betrayed. Loving people are sometimes met with indifference. This is not an injustice to be corrected. It is reality to be accepted. Marcus Aurelius, who had more power than almost any human being in history, still wrote about people who were ungrateful, people who misunderstood him, people who worked against him. He did not respond by trying harder to win their approval. He responded by returning again and again to the question of whether he was being the person he intended to be, regardless of how that was received. You have power over your mind, he wrote, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When someone does not choose you, when they withdraw, when they leave, when they look at everything you are and turn away, the natural human response is to ask, what is wrong with me? What could I have done differently? What do I need to change to make them stay? These are not always bad questions. Sometimes they point to genuine growth, but when they become the only questions, when they send you spiraling into endless self-revision in pursuit of someone else's approval, they become instruments of self-destruction. The Stoic asks a different question. Did I act with integrity? Did I offer what I had to give honestly and without manipulation? Did I treat this person with respect and treat myself with respect in equal measure? If the answer is yes, then the loss, however painful, is not a verdict on your worth. It is simply the nature of two people not being right for each other. And there is no self-revision that can change that. There is only the acceptance of it, and the decision to move forward with your character intact. The high cost of performed selfhood. Every time you hide who you are to keep someone close, you pay a price. The price is not immediately obvious. It is paid in installments, quietly, over time. It is paid in the growing distance between the person you are performing and the person you actually are. It is paid in the slow erosion of self-trust that happens when you override your own instincts often enough. It is paid in exhaustion, the bone-deep fatigue of maintaining a version of yourself that requires constant management. And here is the cruelest irony. Even when the performance works, even when the person stays because of the version of you that you have constructed, you cannot fully receive their love, because somewhere underneath the performance, you know that what they love is not entirely you, and so their warmth cannot reach the coldest, most hidden parts of you, the parts that most need warmth. Seneca wrote, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is not worth fearing." Translated into the language of love and identity, it is not that you must become fearless about being yourself. It is that you must come to understand that the rejection of your authentic self by someone who preferred your performance is not actually a loss of love. It is the loss of an arrangement. And arrangements are not worth your soul. The authentic self, the one that speaks its truth even when its voice shakes, the one that says this is who I am and waits calmly to see who stays. This self is the only one capable of real connection, because real connection requires two real people. Performances can only ever connect with audiences. Boundaries are not walls, they are self-respect made visible. One of the most common ways we beg for love is By refusing to establish or enforce boundaries, we convince ourselves that love means limitlessness, that if we truly care about someone, we will accept anything from them, absorb any treatment, make any accommodation. We mistake boundlessness for devotion. But the Stoics understood that the person without boundaries is not a loving person. They are a person without a self, and you cannot truly love someone from a place of selflessness, because the self is not an obstacle to love. It is its origin. Epictetus taught that every person carries a sacred inner citadel, a core self that is inviolable, that belongs fully to them and cannot be taken by any external force. The work of the Stoic life is to know where that citadel is, to tend it, and to refuse to surrender it to anyone, not out of hostility, but out of self-respect. A boundary is simply this: a statement of what you will and will not participate in, made not as a threat or an ultimatum, but as an honest declaration of who you are and what you need to remain whole. When you say, "I will not accept being spoken to with contempt," you are not making a demand on another person's behavior. You are making a declaration about your own. I will not remain in spaces where I am treated with contempt. The difference is subtle but crucial. One tries to control the other person. The other simply governs yourself. And yes, sometimes the declaration means someone leaves. Sometimes the person who has been treating you with contempt decides, when you stop accepting it, that they would rather find someone who will. And this will hurt. But what walks out the door with them is not love. It was never love. Love does not require you to participate in your own diminishment. Solitude is strength, not punishment. Part of what makes us beg is the terror of aloneness. We live in a culture that treats solitude as failure, as evidence that you have not been chosen, that something is wrong with you, that you are not enough. And so we cling, we chase, we perform. We do anything to avoid the silence of an unanswered message, the empty space in the bed, the quiet of an evening without anyone to report it to. The Stoics held a radically different view of solitude. For Marcus Aurelius, his private journals, written for no one, shared with no one during his lifetime, were a form of philosophical practice, a way of being fully present with his own mind. For Seneca, time spent alone was not time lost, but time reclaimed from the noise of the social world. Retire into yourself as much as you can, Seneca wrote. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those who you are capable of improving. Solitude, properly understood, is not loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted aloneness, the feeling of being disconnected from others when you wish to be connected. Solitude is the chosen, inhabited aloneness of someone who has learned to be good company for themselves. When you can be alone without panic, when the silence does not feel like an accusation, you no longer need other people to rescue you from yourself. And when you no longer need rescuing, you can finally choose people freely, for the right reasons, rather than out of desperation. This changes everything about how you relate to others. You stop choosing people who are available rather than people who are right. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy and attachment for love. You stop staying too long in places that are wrong for you, because leaving would mean facing yourself. And you are not yet sure you can bear that. The person who has learned to be alone, truly, peacefully alone, enters every relationship as someone who is there by choice. And that, more than any performance or pleading, is what makes a relationship real. On letting people go, there comes a moment in many relationships, friendships, romances, family bonds, when you must ask yourself a very hard question. Am I holding on to this person because it is good for both of us, or because I am afraid of what their absence will mean about me? The Stoics called this kind of honest self-interrogation prosos, attention to oneself, watchfulness over one's own interior life. It is not self-obsession. It is the opposite of self-obsession. It is the discipline of looking clearly at your own motivations rather than letting them operate in the dark, driving your decisions without your awareness. When you look clearly, you will sometimes find this. You are holding on because letting go would feel like proof of your unworthiness. If they leave, it means you were not enough. If you release them, it means admitting that this, whatever it was not what you told yourself it was, and that admission feels like a kind of death. But the Stoics knew that acceptance is not defeat. Amor fati, love of fate, was the highest Stoic aspiration. Not merely tolerating what happens, but embracing it as part of the necessary unfolding of your life. This does not mean you cannot grieve. It does not mean the loss is not real. It means that you do not add to the genuine pain of loss, the additional suffering of resistance, the relentless arguing with reality, the what-ifs and if-onlys that keep you suspended in a past that cannot be changed. letting someone go, releasing your grip on a connection that has ended or that was never what you needed it to be, is not a failure of love. It is, in fact, one of love's most demanding expressions. It says, I care more about what is true than I care about what is comfortable. I care more about your freedom and my own than I care about maintaining the illusion of closeness. And it says something else too, something quiet and essential. I trust that I will survive this. I trust that who I am does not depend on whether you stay. Being loved well. None of this is an argument against love. It is an argument for better love. Love that is built on solid ground rather than on fear. Love that flows from fullness rather than from lack. Love that asks for honesty rather than performance. The Stoics were not ascetics who rejected human warmth. They were people who wanted to experience it fully, without the distortions that fear and neediness introduce. Marcus Aurelius wrote with genuine tenderness about the people who had shaped him. Epictetus spoke of the bonds between human beings with reverence. Seneca described true friendship as one of life's greatest gifts, but they understood that to be loved well, you must first become someone who can receive love well, someone who does not flinch away from it or cling to it desperately, but who can hold it lightly, gratefully, knowing that it enhances your life without being its foundation. This means knowing your own worth before someone else tells you what it is. It means deciding, ahead of any relationship, what kind of treatment you will accept and what kind you will not, and then keeping that agreement with yourself even when it is hard. It means showing up as the real version of yourself and letting that be enough. Trusting that the people meant for you will recognize you, and that the people who don't are simply not your people. And when someone loves you, truly freely, without you having to beg for it, you will notice how different it feels from everything you were chasing before. It will feel like rest. It will feel like recognition. It will feel like coming home to a place you somehow always knew existed, but had never quite found. That is what love feels like when you stop begging for it and simply become available to it as yourself, whole and unhidden. The daily practice. This is not a transformation that happens once, in a single moment of insight. It is a practice, daily, imperfect, ongoing. Some mornings you will wake up and feel the old pull, the urge to check if they responded, to replay the conversation, to wonder what you should have said differently. On those mornings, do not scold yourself. Simply notice the pull, name it, and ask yourself, is this action moving me toward the person I want to be or away from them? Some evenings you will catch yourself shrinking, agreeing, performing, and you will not catch it until it is already happening. That is fine. The catching is the work. You do not have to be perfect. You have to keep paying attention. Epictetus suggested beginning each day with a simple inventory. What is in my control today? What is not? Let the things outside your control go, not because they don't matter, but because holding them will not change them, only exhaust you. Direct your full energy to what you can actually shape. Your thoughts, your words, your choices, your character. And let your character be this: someone who loves generously but not desperately. Someone who gives fully but knows when to stop giving to people who only take. Someone who stays present in the relationships that are real and releases without bitterness the ones that were not. Someone who walks through the world with their face uncovered, offering themselves honestly, and trusts that this raw, unhidden, unreduced self is enough, because it is. You are not a project to be completed before you deserve love. You are not a problem to be solved before you are allowed to take up space. You are not required to be everything to everyone, or to twist yourself into whatever shape is. If this message resonated with you, don't just scroll past it. Carry it with you. Hit like so this mindset reaches more people who need it, and subscribe to the channel, because the next lesson might be the one that changes how you see everything. Stay disciplined, stay calm, stay in control.